Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of DawgDial, the show where we talk about University of Georgia football, basketball, recruiting, and much, much more. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my co-hosts Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGAsports.com. We are located at Champy's Chicken on Baxter Street in Athens. We're ready to get the ball rolling on some Georgia football and football recruiting. Jake, the Dogs haven't gotten a commitment since the beginning of January. Kirby Smart just isn't getting it done. What's going on with that?
I know that's what a lot of people would like to believe, but, I've said for weeks, and I do think it's going to be the case, that you're going to see perhaps a quieter signing day than in years past, and how I mean that is a lot of the hay is already in the barn, the farmers can be tending to the stallions, I guess, if you will, at this point, the guys to really round this thing out. But definitely nothing to be worried about, I think, for Georgia fans. Still predicting a strong finish for those guys, and looking forward to seeing what they're able to finish with.
And speaking of five stars coming into the fold, we got Dave McMahon back this week. Dave, pleasure to have you back.
Thank you very much.
And guys, we're going to get another great show going for you. We are at Champy's Chicken on Baxter Street. Come down, have a 40, have a foul, and come in the door, talk some Georgia football with us. This is Paul Maharry for DawgDial, UGAsports.com.
Because you want more flavor, at Nuke's we marinate and grill to perfection. Because you want the latest culinary tastes and trends, we never rest. At Nuke's, great food drives us. So we are meticulous in our preparation, obsessed with the quality of our ingredients, and uncompromising about serving you our very best. We believe that sharing a memorable meal is one of life's ultimate pleasures. Join us at Nuke's Eatery.
And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my co-host, Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGAsports.com. And guys, in the show open, we talked about Georgia hasn't had a commitment since January 1. It seems like it's so long ago, especially after the amazing December that they already had. Jake Roos, though, says not to worry. The big dogs are still out there. The coaches are still out on the road, right now, recruiting as we speak, and late into the night of many nights to come up until February 1. Jake, who are the big names on the board that we've already talked about them a little bit? Who are some of the names that you've been hearing lately?
Well, first off, I'm going to say I'm a little disappointed that you weren't calling me Big Dog. I thought that was me. Yes. But, no, some of the big names, obviously, the Georgia fans want to know about and that are going to be key pieces, if Georgia wants to finish this class as strongly as possible. Aubrey Solomon, I know everybody wants to know about the kid out of Leesburg. The big question mark is what I'm calling him from here on out.
Ooh, I like that.
I think that he's the kid, if Allen Iverson was the answer, this kid is the question mark. Aubrey is really up in the air, and I know that everybody wants, an update. I've told people for weeks, I still believe this to be true. I don't know that anybody has a very firm grasp on what Aubrey's going to do. I don't know that Aubrey has a very firm grasp on what he's going to do at this point. And I don't mean that as any slight. I think that he is a kid who has a lot of great options, and that can be overwhelming. I know that if I had top-tier Division I football schools throwing offers at me, I'd have a lot to think about as well.
I had a couple community colleges that
came
didn't. After me.
No, you didn't.
And it was hard. So I can imagine.
So Aubrey Solomon is the key guy, and I know that everybody wants to know how I think Georgia's chances are with him. I will tell you personally, I don't feel very strong about him. I know that there are other people that feel differently, and, that's their MO, but I really haven't felt good about Aubrey in a long time for Georgia. I think that we did put him as hot on our hot board a couple weeks back, but that was mostly due to the fact that he was, at the time, hinting that he was going to possibly take an official visit to Georgia. Since then, it seems like things have changed. Reports are saying yes, no, who knows. Like I said, don't believe anything that you hear on the kid until some ink comes to paper. I'm telling you, I really don't even think it might be over until even if a commitment were made. Look for where the kid signs. Look for where he shows up to school, and it'll be a very Demetrius Robertson-esque type of situation.
Robertson or Roquan Smith or something like it's going to drive Georgia fans and drive Michigan fans, but I don't really care about the Michigan fans.
Sure.
It's going to drive the Georgia fans nuts for a long time, you're saying.
And speaking of five stars, speaking of big-time guys, Dave, I know you've done some research on some of the big-time guys that Georgia already has lined up for this class of 2017 class. And the stats you were telling me pre-show, I did not believe you until you showed me.
Well, one of the things that I looked up recently, obviously you two know a lot more about recruiting than I do. I mean, I am totally okay with that because
That's the one thing I know more than you. Dave. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you two are very, very good. And for me, there's a lot of talk about whether a guy's a 5-star or a 4-star, or a guy's even close to being a 4-star. And on the Rivals.com system, if you're very close to being a 5-star and you're not, you're like basically a 6.0 on the rating, and 6.1 is basically a 5-star. So what I did a look about how many players are either a 6 or a 6.1. So because those two types of players are very, very close. And right now Georgia has 7 players that are currently verbaled or signed with Georgia so far that are either a 6.0 or 6.1. And the 7 is by far, I mean, if you go back, it might be the most ever. But what I did, I looked at the last 10 years, and like last year we only had 3 of the guys. So we had 7 this year so far. I mean, it could be even more with a Solomon and stuff like that. But I mean, right now with we have 7. Last year Georgia had 3. The year before that Georgia had 5. The year before that Georgia had 3. So and the year before that 1. So it's basically Georgia's way more ahead of the game than they've ever been. The other thing I looked about, people kept on saying, well, Georgia always gets one of those 6.0 or 6.1 guys because they always get a great running back or a great wide receiver. But what about the big uglies that people on the offensive line?
Sure.
Georgia right now, of the 7, 2 of those are offensive line in Andrew Thomas and Isaiah Wilson right now. So 2 this season. They had only 2 in the previous 9 seasons combined. Offensive linemen that are either 6 or 6.1, and that was John Theus a few years ago, and that was H.A. Harmon way back when. And so the 2 in the last 9 years is pretty cool compared to 2 this year. And the other thing I looked at was the 6.0 and the 6.1. With that, there's only one other school in the SEC East that has either a 6.0 and 6.1. And that's South Carolina right now.
Got one.
That has one 6.0. No one else in the East has anywhere near a 6.0 or 6.1. If you look at the West, Alabama is doing pretty good. LSU is doing pretty good, and A&M has 1, and Auburn has 1. It's either 6 or 6.1. But right now, if you look just in the East, Georgia is by far destroying anything in recruiting-wise.
All right, now I'm going to hop in here because if you don't know too much about recruiting, that probably sounded like a bunch of gibberish. It was 6'1" and 6'0". What does it all mean? What does it all mean? 6'1" are essentially guys that we project at Rivals.com, and I say we very loosely, not me. I'm not the guy who does that. But our national analysts are the guys who project those guys. A 6'1" is somebody that we predict is going to be a first-round NFL draft pick, essentially. And 6.1 is a guy that you project will be a high-round NFL draft pick, probably a major impact player in college. So essentially what Dave's saying is based on the numbers we've got in front of us and looking at Rivals rankings, Rivals experts are predicting about 7 of these guys to be really major contributors going forward, and that's huge. If you look back and you look at the numbers, Patrick Garbin had a great piece over at UGAsports.com the other day where he broke down what this all means. What you see, more often than not, the teams that recruit well, they're the teams that win.
Jimmys and Joes over the X's and O's. And that, as Dave just pointed out, Georgia is bringing in the big-time Jimmys and Joes for this class. We're going to talk a little bit more about that after the break, talk about a couple more key pieces they could bring in to make this class even better. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by Champy's Chicken and UGAsports.com. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my co-hosts, Jake Bruce and Dave McMahon of UGAsports.com. Guys, we are here at Champy's Chicken on Baxter Street, where the adult beverages are cold, the chicken's good, and just come on down, holler at us, and put your questions into DawgDial. We've also got trivia starting up with Dave McMahon after the shows. So, guys, we've talked briefly about 6.0, 6.1, the big-time stars that Georgia's getting in. This class already has surpassed everything that Georgia's been able to do in the last 10 years. And if you combine the offensive linemen, like Dave said, from the past 10 years, Georgia's already got the same amount of guys, high-level guys in Isaiah Wilson and Andrew Thomas, too. Jake, we've got a ton of questions coming in over the chat line, and I know we want to get to those in this segment. We've got a lot of guys that want to speak about recruiting, so let's get into those.
Sure. James Hayes is the guy that we're going to start with. James, thank you so much for sending your question in. James, the reason I picked this question is because a lot of people are asking the same things, and the question is, what's up with Solomon? What's up with Collins? What's up with Markavius Bryant? What's up with Jamias Williams? And what's up to Daryl Slayton. We touched on Solomon earlier, so I won't rehash those points. But Nico Collins is a guy that I really do like Georgia's chances of finishing out the class with. I think that he's probably the receiver that makes the most sense. One thing about him is that both of his primary recruiters at Michigan have now moved on. And it looks like Alabama's probably going to finish up with a guy like Henry Ruggs at the wide receiver position. So I don't anticipate much of a roadblock for Georgia. Took a recent visit to LSU. Do think he enjoyed himself there, but I will be surprised, I will say, if Nico Collins is not a part of this class. Marcavius Bryant had a visit this past weekend. By all accounts, everything went well, as expected. Didn't do anything publicly. Is he a guy who's going to have a spot up until signing day? That I don't know. And, if he waits it out too long, it might be a case where somebody else comes in and snaps that spot up. I don't know who necessarily that would be. Maybe a guy like Leonard Warner,
yep.
If he were ready to move. Jamias Williams asks, that's a great question. What's gonna happen with Jamias? The best answer I can give you is that if Georgia could somehow get him on campus, get him flipped this weekend, and get him to shut down his process, that's their best shot. Letting him go back to Columbia and go back to South Carolina, I think, bodes really well for South Carolina in the end. I know that several of our experts up at the national level don't expect Jamias to make the flip. It's hard for me to say at this point. Like I said, it all hinges around what happens this weekend. Last guy, Daryl Slayton. I think Daryl Slayton's going to Florida. I do. He liked Randy Shannon a lot. Randy Shannon now named the DC there. And Slayton's a guy who, if Georgia ends up having a huge need, somebody asked about potential flips. If Devontae Wyatt were a guy who left Georgia's class, maybe then you see a much bigger push to get Slayton to come in, be that defensive lineman that they want. But overall, those are the five guys. Those are my responses on those five guys.
And Jake, we just had a question come in from Michael Cagle, who says, "What are the chances we lose Wyatt?"
I think that they are actually pretty good. I think that Devontae Wyatt is a kid who is about as conflicted as I can remember in the last few years heading into signing day when it comes to a commitment. I'm trying to think of somebody that stands out in my mind who was just like legitimately torn. But this kid, is comes from such a small high school, not a high school that does a lot. There's not a perennial state contender or anything like that at Towers High School. Great football, don't get me wrong, but this is a whole other stratosphere for a young man like that out of here to be dealing with. So I think that it's probably there is a concern for him about making the right decision. He doesn't have a lot of people to lean on, like if you went to Grayson or you went to even somewhere like a Carver, Atlanta, or something like that, where they've had some guys come through. Towers is a bit more limited in that regard. So I think this is really tough on Devontae. Remember, he was committed to South Carolina at one point. Still really loves the Gamecocks. I talked to him personally over the weekend, said that Will Muschamp and the staff really impressed him up there, said it feels like home when he goes. He is still committed to Georgia. Will it remain? I don't know. I think that, again, like Jamias Williams, they got to get this kid in this weekend. They got to say, hey, lay it out. Here's why we need you. This is why we got to have you, period, point blank. We don't want you visiting anywhere else. And if you're still shopping around, we are too. I think that if they can get him to shut it down, that's what they want. That's the ideal situation. Whether or not he does it, I don't know.
The big thing for Georgia moving forward, though, we haven't seen it that much this year, are decommitments. We haven't seen it. We've seen a couple of them happen with Latavius Brinney and the likes, but it's not as frequent this year. Kirby Smart's really locked down his class. With Wyatt potentially leaving, that does open up the possibility of things that we haven't even talked about. So Georgia, as of right now, are sitting in the driver's seat. They are not being driven around. They are moving the bus in terms of recruiting, and they are going after the guys that they want. Now, you get a couple decommitments, things of that nature. That's where you kind of have to go the plan B, plan C route. Georgia has not had to do that yet. And in previous years, Dave, you've seen it, just as much as Jake has, the Tate Crowders, the likes of that. We have not seen Georgia had to go to that plan B yet.
When you think, like when you said to come to the very last moment, and it's nerve-wracking for obviously the coaches and the players itself, but the fans go nuts. I've heard so many times that people, the last days, if Georgia, let's say Georgia could dominate in recruiting in August, September, October, November, December, January. But if they don't finish strong in February, people say, oh, Kirby Smart's not a closer, or before that, Mark Richt wasn't a closer. Is it a failure on the class? But it's like, would you rather be? There's no exact science in recruiting. You could be. Would you rather be horrible in the beginning and great at the end, or vice versa? I mean, people are gonna say what they feel like and this stuff. But no matter what it is, it drives you nuts. It just drives you crazy, and it's fun, but it's not fun.
I think it goes back to the same point that you made. Georgia's already stacked up their class with guys that are big-time guys. We've got another question that just come in through the wire. Again, from Michael Cagle. Says, any news on Aaron Sterling? Have we heard anything out of him lately?
No, and not a kid I feel very confident about Georgia landing, I will say at this point. Doesn't feel the need that they want, which is a nose tackle, a guy like Devontae Wyatt or Aubrey Solomon.
Because you want more flavor, at Nukes we marinate and grill to perfection. Because you want the latest culinary tastes and trends, we never rest. At Nukes, great food drives us. So we are meticulous in our preparation, obsessed with the quality of our ingredients, and uncompromising about serving you our very best. We believe that sharing a memorable meal is one of life's ultimate pleasures. Join us at Nukes Eatery.
And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my co-hosts Jake Bruce and Dave McMahon of UGASports.com. And guys, we've been talking a lot about Georgia football recruiting and the likes of that, but we're going to bring on a special guest in Hutson Mason, former Georgia quarterback, who is now with us. And Hutson, how are you doing, man?
Doing good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, not a problem. Thank you so much for being on with us. And I guess the first question that I have for you, Hutson, is how are you doing and what are you doing right now? Let the people of Georgia know what's going on with you.
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. I am still pursuing some opportunities to play professional ball. Been up, obviously signed with Washington after my senior year, and then spent a year in Saskatchewan up in the CFL, and signed a futures contract last year with Calgary, and now I'm pursuing some other opportunities, man. So I'm still pursuing my dream of trying to get back into the NFL.
Well, Hutson, that's awesome, man. First and foremost, congratulations on every endeavor that you have. We know you were down at Colquitt County doing a little bit of coaching and the likes of that, but now you're back into football, so we're extremely pleasant to have you on the show, and glad for you. And Dave had something before the show, and what was the stat, Dave?
You think of Georgia as a recently, and people, you might have had some good quarterbacks in Georgia lore between way back when with Fran Tarkenton and Johnny Rouch, and then you go a little bit more recently with either David Green, DJ Shockley, Aaron Murray, Matthew Stafford or so. But of all those people, it's Hutson Mason that has the record for best completion percentage. So how does that feel like? Obviously the team goals are first, but you have something that none of those other guys have.
And now you're dominate. Hutson, you've been gone long enough to where you can kind of be excited about that, and you can tell us.
Man, back in the day, Bobo would always tell me, you can't go broke taking a profit. And so it may have been small profits back in the day, but hey, it was profit none the least. And so, yeah, I think anytime you have a chance to, keep a high percentage, completion percentage, usually around or above that 65% mark, you can count at a pretty good year, and usually your numbers kind of follow as a pretty productive offensive type of year.
And speaking of Coach Bobo, you mentioned briefly and stuff that it was Bobo's record that you broke. So did you, after the season over, did you give him a little aha type thing?
Oh yeah, man, definitely. It made it even sweeter.
And Hutson, I know you've been studying up on your 2017 recruits. So who are some of the guys that are, I guess, sticking out to you, man? You've been doing your homework on this. Who are some of the prospects that you would like to line up with, go into battle with the Georgia Bulldogs?
Yeah, man. Well, I think it first off can be kind of broken down into two areas. For me personally, after watching the Dogs in 2016, I think your two biggest needs offensively are that receiver position and secondly the O-line position. And I know Georgia's got some really good commits right now. I think if I'm not mistaken, they've got 4 commits. Jeremiah Holloman, a 4-star, 6'2", 195-pounder, and I don't think personally it's necessarily just about getting the right talent, but also about the right type of receivers in there. I personally think if you've looked back last year at Georgia, they've kind of lacked in the area of a downfield super speeder guy that has the ability to go up and make some of those plays. I think really offensively, if you look throughout the SEC, you look at Alabama, you look at all the teams that are kind of up at the top statistically, they've got the ability to stretch the field. And I think that's kind of the area that Georgia has lacked the past couple years. And so, I think they're right on course to fill those needs. And, offensively, I think they're doing a really good job too. Six total commits on the O-line. I know they've got a big need to replace up there. I believe they lose 4 starters, and with 2 of the guys coming back, Isaiah Wynn and Brandon Cublano. I personally believe that Cublano is going to be the center next year, kind of direct into traffic. Isaiah Wynn, I personally believe, will be a better fit at one of the inside guard areas. So you're looking at 3 positions and 3 opportunities for new freshmen to kind of come in and start.
Now, Hutson, when you're looking at these guys and you're looking at the size Georgia's adding, and that's been a hallmark of Sam Pittman and really his recruiting style. Now that you've had a chance to go, try your hand at the professional level, play some ball up in Canada, how important do you think that size is when you're talking about offensive linemen?
Yeah, man, I think it personally is kind of it depends on what you're playing. If you're an interior lineman, you're looking for more of those heavy guys, kind of your bigger 300 to 320-pound guys. If you're playing tackle, man, tackle is so different. I was having a conversation with Greg Pike the other day, and obviously Greg was a guy that I played with at Georgia, but naturally he's a guard by trade. But this past year, he's playing right tackle, and he was kind of just talking to me about how difficult it was for him to go from inside out to outside, just because of the different amount of footwork that it requires. You're also facing completely different pass rushers. Those interior guys, you get those heavy 300-pounders that are, you get a lot of double teams on the inside, so you get a lot of help. Where on the outside, you're kind of one-on-one, and so you're getting different technique. And so, just to answer your question, I think, it's important to have guys with good size, but also that have good feet and can move.
When we come back from break, Hutson, I want to talk to you a little bit more about how Georgia's actual season went. And with you being a quarterback most recently for the Georgia Bulldogs, we want to get your feedback on how you think Kirby Smart's first year went and how it's going to be going moving forward now that they have the new head coach in place. Hutson, thanks for being on with us. Stay with us for one more segment. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGASports.com. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGASports.com. And guys, you've got Hutson Mason on the phone with us. Last segment, he touched on a little bit of the class of 2017 recruiting and how he thought those guys would come in and impact Georgia moving forward. But Hutson, as a former quarterback for the University of Georgia, we kind of wanted you to break down how you thought the 2016 season went. Obviously, they started a freshman quarterback, a 5-star by the name of, I think his name's Jacob Eason.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I think you probably heard of him too, Hutson. But I want to see how your take was on how he was kind of reading defenses, how you thought the overall game plan was for Kirby Smart, and just your overall thoughts on the first year with Smart being the head coach.
Yeah, first off, I think Jacob had a really good year. I know there were some really high expectations, but I kind of go back to my freshman year when I enrolled at Georgia. From day one when I got there, I was the number 2 guy, and I kind of remember going back and being a young guy and remember, the amount of stress and pressure that you're under, not only off the field, but on the field to pick up a new system and to be able to handle the complicated system that Coach Bobo, wanted to implement. And I know Coach Bobo and Coach Chaney kind of come from the same tree offensively. And so, I think Jacob had a great year. He completed 55% of his completions. He had a 2-to-1 TD to pick ratio, 16 touchdowns to 8, which is exactly, par for the course for where you want your quarterback to be, that 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio. And I think really for Jacob, it's just going to be about getting guys around him to elevate his play. I think as a coach, personally, your job as a coach is to put your players in a position to succeed. And one of those areas to succeed is by recruiting players and recruiting guys that can elevate his game. And so I think this is going to be a huge spring for Jacob, just because going back, I remember after a year in Coach Bobo's system, it was really that next spring to next summer when I was really able to kind of come up to the line of scrimmage and not really have to think too much. And so I think this spring will be huge for Jacob in the learning process and being able to think less and just react more.
Hutson, obviously you had a chance to, like you said, watch this kid this year. If you were going to give him one pointer as Hutson Mason, graduate quarterback and professional quarterback, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give to this young man entering that sophomore year?
And it would just be to study your butt off, really. I mean, I learned that when I got there from Aaron, and Aaron was only a year older than me, but that may be the one thing, the one kind of downfall that Jacob hasn't really had. He hasn't had that older guy, that fourth or fifth year guy to kind of lean on, to show him the ropes on how to prepare, how to come in on Sundays. And it's a process, Aaron showed me that, and I was lucky to be around a great guy, and I tried to pass that on to the younger guys while I was there. But the bottom line is everybody in this league is talented, and I think Jacob is probably seeing that. He came in as a really talented guy, a highly rated guy, but once you get to the SEC, man, everybody around you is great, and so your talent level is pretty equivalent to everybody else. So the margin for error is a lot smaller, and so it makes a big difference mentally on how you can separate yourselves from everybody else in the way that you prepare.
And Hutson, speaking of Jacob Eason, let's kind of move on to a broader term in terms of the entire football team. What did you see under Kirby Smart's first year that you think they might be able to improve on, or you think that they did well, or what were just your overall thoughts on the first year?
Yeah, I think it was kind of about what I personally expected. Besides the loss to Vanderbilt, I thought Georgia was going to be a 9-win team. That's kind of what I personally thought it was going to be. And they were kind of right there. They had a big win to end the season in the bowl game. And, he's doing some great things recruiting, which, he brings that recruiting philosophy of keeping the boys from in-state home. And there's a lot of talent in-state. I believe Georgia's got 15 of the top 75 commitments from the top players in the state, which is huge. You want to kind of build that wall around the state and keep those guys here. And, I think there's always areas to improve on. Offensively, I think they would like to be able to be a little bit more balanced. It's huge that Sony and Chubb are both coming back next year, but to be able to utilize your receivers a little bit more and keep safeties and keep defenses in that too high safety scheme and look where you've got the mismatch in the numbers to run the ball is only going to make you a better offense. And defensively, I think it's just about adding some depth up front. There's a big recruit that Georgia's going after, and Aubrey Solomon. I think for him personally, especially in the structure of Mel Tucker's defense at 3-4, those guys up front that play that shade and that nose guard position are huge. I think back to like Mount Cody at Alabama and some of those guys. That kind of starts right there with those guys. So being able to get him and add some depth up front, I think, will be huge.
You talked about the importance of keeping in-state recruits. Now, if we went back a little bit, you almost went to Clemson. Is this true? And tell me, you were almost an in-state player that left the state. Tell me.
I did. My recruiting process was a little weird and a little unorthodox for a quarterback. I didn't really have too many offers going through my senior year, and then all of a sudden come December, only a couple months before National Signing Day when most other quarterbacks are already committed, I started to kind of get my process kind of started to pick up. It was kind of like a domino effect. I got one offer from Mississippi State and then got one from Florida State and Clemson and Georgia all kind of in 1 week. And so I took my visits, and it did come down to Georgia and Clemson for me.
What advice can you give Jake Fromm, who's a 5-star coming in for Georgia, who's going to be sitting behind Jacob Eason potentially, just like you sat behind Aaron Murray? What advice can you give him to, if he's not going to overtake Jacob, to sit behind him and wait his turn and then, come out and be the completion percentage leader like you were?
Yeah, I think it's all about just being ready for your opportunity, man. There's a lot of times in your career, depending on how, Fromm's career goes, there's going to be some opportunities of discouragement or sometimes a discouragement when you think you may never see the field. But the reality of it is at any given moment, your time may come, and you got to be ready to make the most of it because you never know when you're going to get it back. And, I've been reading a little bit about this storyline with Bryce Ramsey and his possible departure. And it kind of takes me back to the situation I was back in 2010 as a true freshman. Sean could be in the same position. He may be in the same position if Bryce decides to leave with two quarterbacks. So that's a pretty interesting storyline. From being a true freshman, number 2 guy, if Bryce decides to hit the road. So that'll be a pretty interesting storyline to keep your eye on.
And I mean, you had to be ready because, I mean, during your junior season, Aaron Murray gets hurt in that Kentucky game, and you had to finish that game, and then next week you have Georgia Tech or so. So, I mean, you were thrown right into Georgia's biggest rival and your biggest in-state rival right away.
Yeah, absolutely. The number 2, the backup quarterback position is not a sexy position. It is, but it isn't. Everyone always thinks you're the hero. Everyone always wants the backup quarterback to come in and thinks he can do a little bit of a better job. But at the same time, you're putting in your preparation and your work throughout the week, and there's also that opportunity or that mindset that you may not get what you really reap what you sow. You may not get your reward. And so you have to be mentally focused. You have to be determined to be ready at any moment, because the worst thing you could possibly do is not be ready and then miss that opportunity.
Well, Hutson, we are extremely thankful that you were ready to come on DawgDial with us. Just want to say thank you again so much, man. We've got a lot of people on Facebook Live that are saying, you've studied up on your recruiting and you know your stuff, and they're saying you're a DGD, man. So thank you so much for coming on with us. And, again, I got the question right about completion percentage, so Dave said he owes me some chicken tenders here at Champions, man, so I appreciate it.
Let's do it again soon, Hutson.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to be on, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And, guys, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to DawgDial, presented by UGAsports.com. And welcome back to DawgDial. I'm your host, Paul Maharry, joined by my co-hosts Jake Roos and Dave McMahon of UGAsports.com. And if you've been with us throughout the entire show, we just spoke with Hutson Mason, a former Georgia quarterback. Really brought the fire in terms of recruiting knowledge. Gave some great advice to not only Jacob Eason, but also Jake Fromm on, what could potentially happen, him coming in and being in the same position that Hutson was in behind Aaron Murray, and how he adapted to that and then went on to be the completion percentage leader for Georgia all time. So a really great interview with Hutson.
Killed it. Love it.
Jake, I know we've got a few more questions.
I'm going to give it a little.
Give that lightning round. There we go.
There's our lightning round bell.
Lightning round started.
So basically how we're going to do it, we'll rapid fire your questions that we got in here. First question, Jay Teal sent me one in. He said, Jake, any chance UGA can get their foot in the door at Bishop Gorman, starting with the linebacker next year?
Can you say his name?
Not quite. He goes by IE.
Yeah,
that's his nickname. So, the young man, one of the top linebackers in the nation. Excuse me for not being able to pronounce his name. I had to get him to do it for me like 3 times.
Yes.
Don't think Georgia is going to be a force in Bishop Gorman just yet. However, they definitely need to get a foot in that door because that's one of the best programs in the nation. That's IMG of the West. I know a lot of Georgia fans are familiar with IMG here. That's IMG West. So hopefully they can get him. And if they were able to land that kid, huge pickup.
Yeah, and not only that, Jake, just like you said, being able to get into that IMG West. We got another question coming in from TJ Stevens.
Let me hit you with this one. Who do you think's the most likely to decommit from this class? And then in contrast, any predictions of a flip?
Probably Devontae Wyatt at this point, I think, is the most likely to decommit from Georgia. Although I'm not 100% sold that he will. I think that his visit to Georgia, Georgia's really going to try to seal the deal with him. I think that's going to be a huge kind of factor with that. If he makes it back to South Carolina, who knows? Also, a positional flip that might come to Georgia. Me talking to Jamias Williams over the weekend, I think if anybody's going to flip to Georgia, it's going to be Jamias. They're not really recruiting anybody else right now that is committed to any other school. And I really think Jamias' heart is in Athens. It's just a matter of getting everything together and bringing him back to his hometown. Jake, I know we got a question from Bob Flynn. Says, out of current commits, who will be playing a different position in 2 to 3 years, if any? I've got one in mind.
I love that question. I think that's such a good question. We don't get to talk about that enough. Go with yours first, and then I'll come with mine.
I think there's a guy by the name of Jaden Hunter who I would not mind seeing at the strong safety position, Cam Chancellor-esque. He's fast enough for it. He can hit, and he's got the technique, and he's got the brains for that position. I would not put it past Jaden Hunter to be a strong safety?
Personally, I'm going to go with two guys. I think that there's a big chance that you see two guys kind of invert positions, and the guys that I'm looking at to do that possibly down the line are Trey Blunt. I do think that he could end up playing some defensive back. I know that people are very high on him at wide receiver, but all reports I got from him at defensive back this year were outstanding. People believe that's where he's going to end up. I think that the guy he would flip-flop with, if that were to happen, is possibly D'Angelo Gibbs.
Yep.
I think D'Angelo's a kid that we've seen play receiver a lot. Not saying he's not an incredibly talented defensive back. He is, and he can certainly grow and become even better there. But, boy, what a weapon in the receiving game. He makes some catches sometimes that just drop your jaw. So would not surprise me to see those two guys flip-flop.
Jake went with the realistic options. I went with the kind of future option that maybe pan out. Dave, can you remember any guys, I'm putting you on the spot here, that switched positions after they got to Georgia and made a huge impact?
Well, the one that I love to talk about is Robert Edwards. I mean, that happened in the 90s. He started off as a cornerback here, played 2 pretty good years as at corner for Georgia, and then in 96 when he switched 95 when he switched over, dominated 5 touchdowns his first game. He had started off great in Tennessee, and then the injury happened. The 96 but 97 bounced back, looked incredibly great. So he started off as a corner, went to running back and dominated. So
never really see
he's
that.
my favorite.
No. All right, I got 40 seconds. I'm going to hit as many as I can. Chances on Elijah Blades, not very good. I think Nebraska's the team to beat if anybody's going to beat Florida. We touched top 5 before. Best guess on who we close with, Nico Collins, Marcavius Bryant, coin flip on Aubrey Solomon, and one of Amir Speed or Jemias Williams. If we land Nico, on Trey, it's defensive back. I think that's very possible. I think that you can easily see that happening. I think Nico Collins perfectly rounds it out for you, and Trey Blunt, he's got a great build for it. Very physical, so don't forget that.
Speaking of rounding it out, we are now rounding out DawgDial. Thanks again for sticking with us, guys. We are here at Champions Chicken, presented by UGAsports.com. Thanks for listening.